My name is Russell Madsen. After 20 years of quiet loyalty, my boss blindsided me, blamed me for a failure I didn't cause, and cornered me into a forced exit. It stung like betrayal from family, but I didn't crumble. I stood up, exposed the truth, and walked out with my dignity intact. Stay with me until the end. Hear how I turned silence into strength. Then tell me honestly, did I do the right thing? What would you have done in my shoes? It was a Thursday. I remember the sky being too calm for what was about to happen. Late October. The kind of morning where the cold sneaks up your sleeves, and the leaves outside the parking lot swirl around your feet like they're trying to warn you of something. I'd parked in the same spot I'd been using for years, third row from the south entrance, just past the faded handicap sign no one ever bothered repainting. I remember adjusting my collar in the side mirror before walking in. Habit, maybe. Or maybe I was looking for a reason to pause. The building looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. Hasn't for a while. Inside, the lights in the main hallway always buzzed faintly, low and constant, like static in your head you eventually forget is there. The floors had just been waxed. It smelled like lemon-scented distance. That's what I always thought of it, as distance. A cover-up smell for too many decisions, made too far from the people doing the real work. Upstairs, the third floor still held the engineering and systems group, where I'd spent nearly 2 decades designing control panels and quietly fixing other people's oversights. I was 57 now. Hadn't made much noise along the way, but I'd helped keep this company upright more times than they'd ever know. Nordell Scientific Systems wasn't flashy, but it mattered. At least it used to. I hung up my coat on the peg behind my door, sat down, and powered on the terminal. Same login screen. Same background noise from the vent. It was all so familiar that, for a split second, I could almost believe I still belonged here. I reached for the coffee pot, burnt from sitting too long, and poured the last inch into my mug. The one with the cracked handle. The one I never bothered to replace because no one else would ever want it. That's when I noticed the silence. Not just the usual quiet of engineers who hated small talk. This was different. A kind of intentional silence. The kind where everyone knows something, and no one wants to be the one to say it first. 3 cubicles down. 2 guys from testing were whispering just a little too obviously. When I caught their eyes, they looked away, pretended to be studying a shared screen that wasn't even on. Something had shifted. Again. The past few months had felt like I was slowly being written out of the story. Projects reassigned without explanation. Emails I was once CC'd on suddenly stopped showing up. The new leadership called it streamlining, but it felt more like erasing. Kellan Trask was the new name on everyone's lips. Fresh out of an executive MBA program. Shoes too clean, voice too polished. He made his rounds with the marketing team more often than the engineers. Said things like, "We need to move quicker and leaner." Another favorite was, "Too many hands in legacy systems." You hear something like that once, you shrug it off. Hear it 3 times, you start wondering if you're one of those hands. I hadn't spoken to him directly in weeks. Most of what I knew came from second-hand hallway chatter or watching him breeze through the floor with his curated smirk and a stack of performance charts no one had asked for. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they were just reorganizing. Maybe I'd get pulled into something new. Maybe all of this unease was just in my head. At 4:32 that afternoon, Melanie from admin walked up to my desk, clipboard in hand, tight-lipped. She didn't make eye contact when she spoke. "There's a meeting with Kellan. 6th floor. He'd like to see you before end of day. Any materials I need to bring?" She shook her head. "Nope. Just you. Just me." I watched her walk away, without another word. That phrase stuck with me, just you. Like it wasn't a meeting. Like it wasn't even about work. I stood up and reached for my jacket, but paused. Didn't put it on. I wasn't cold. My hands were warm, too warm. That happens sometimes when adrenaline kicks in before the rest of you realizes why. The elevator dinged, and I stepped inside. Alone. 6 floors up, I watched my reflection in the brushed metal door. Hair grayer than I remembered this morning. Tie slightly askew. eyes tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. The building hadn't changed much in 20 years. But today it felt like I had. As the doors opened, I thought to myself, half laughing, half hurting. 20 years, and somehow, I still walked into that room thinking I'd be listened to. The room was colder than I expected. Not just the AC, it was the kind of cold that settles in when you're not meant to stay long. There were no folders, no projector, not even a cup of coffee waiting on the sideboard. Just Kellan, standing by the glass wall like he owned the skyline, and a woman from HR, whose name I didn't know, flipping through a legal pad without looking up. Kellan smiled when I walked in. Not the friendly kind. It was that thin-lipped, let's get this over with smile that people wear when they're about to say something rehearsed. Russell, he nodded, motioning toward one of the chairs across the table. Thanks for coming. I sat. Didn't take off my coat. Didn't lean back. He started with the sort of line that tells you what's really coming. You've been with us a long time, he said. And we respect that. But the company's moving in a new direction. I didn't respond. I've learned that silence makes people uncomfortable, especially ones who've already made up their minds. He cleared his throat and shifted in his seat. There was a disruption last week, he continued. Line 3A in the automated diagnostics lab halted unexpectedly for nearly 2 hours. Caused a backlog, affected shipping. I'm sure you heard about it. I had. Everyone had. But I hadn't touched line 3A since August. The new process map, signed off by Kellan himself, had reassigned that responsibility to 2 junior analysts in his new team. Still, I waited to see where he was going. There were missed flags in the system alerts, he said. Someone should have caught it before it spread. I looked at him. Really looked. Eyes steady, arms resting casually on the chair, like this was just part of his day. I could feel the tension rising in the back of my neck. You're implying that someone was me, I said. I'm saying, he replied, that with your experience, you should have seen it coming. That was the moment. The click in the mechanism. The line drawn in quiet ink. I wasn't being let go. I was being erased. Rewritten. Like the parts one played over 20 years were just loose pencil marks they could rub out with the heel of a hand. I didn't explode. I didn't lean across the table or raise my voice. But something in me, something old and steady, moved. Like the weight of staying quiet had finally shifted. I haven't been on 3A for months, I said calmly. That was reassigned. Your plan. Your org chart. Kellan didn't blink. Processes change. But accountability doesn't. He said it like a slogan. Like something they teach you in a leadership seminar for people who've never worked on the floor. The HR woman scribbled something. I didn't look at her. Kellan leaned forward slightly. Look, Russell, I understand how this must feel. Nobody's questioning your past contributions. But maybe it's time we talk about the future. You've got options. That word, options, was heavy with a kind of fake kindness. If you consider stepping down voluntarily, he said, we can help you transition. Positive remarks on file. Maybe even some outplacement assistance. He let that sit there like a gift on the table. I thought about the years, late nights debugging code that wasn't mine, patching systems that someone else broke, watching coworkers burn out and leave while I stayed, thinking loyalty meant something. I looked him in the eye and said, I'll get back to you. I could see that annoyed him. Just a flicker. He expected closure, one way or the other. Instead, I left the room with my coat still on and a knot in my chest that felt like something cracking open instead of caving in. Outside, the hallway seemed quieter than usual. Or maybe I was hearing everything too loudly. Every fluorescent hum, every click of a keyboard behind a cubicle wall. I didn't go back to my desk right away. I walked to the end of the corridor, past the conference rooms no one ever used, to the far window that overlooked the west parking lot. From there, I could see the spot I parked in every day. Same car, same space. But today, it felt like I was standing on the outside of something I used to be part of. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was tired. And not just in the physical sense. Tired of being rearranged like a piece of furniture every time someone new wanted to move quicker and leaner. Back at my desk, the blinking cursor on the screen waited for input. For once, I had no desire to respond. I sat down slowly, took a breath, and whispered to no one in particular. They didn't fire me today, but they made sure I knew it was coming. I opened a blank notepad and typed out one sentence. This wasn't about a system failure. It was about making room. Then I saved it, just in case I needed to remind myself later. I came the next morning like I always had, same entrance, same thermos, same quiet nod to the security guy by the door. But something in the air had changed. It wasn't anything you could see, just a tightening, like the building itself was holding its breath. No one asked how the meeting went. They didn't have to. People avoid what they already suspect. I sat down at my desk and noticed the cup before I noticed the silence. It wasn't mine, clean, still warm, lid sealed. A sticky note on the side read, "Hang in there, eh?" I knew it was Aria. She was one of the newer systems analysts, sharp, polite, not the type to stir the pot. We'd only worked together a few times, but she always paid attention. More than most, honestly. The gesture caught me off guard. I hadn't realized how long it had been since someone around here had done something human. I took a sip and opened my inbox. That's when I started seeing the pattern. Emails I remembered writing, review notes, hardware assessments, project input, they were there, but buried. Threads I should have been included in Stop CCING Me a month ago. A system update I'd authored was now circulating with someone else's initials. And the kicker? A recent presentation used 3 of my diagrams without a single mention of my name. It wasn't an oversight. It was deliberate. Subtle deletions. Strategic silences. You don't have to erase a man all at once. Just chip away enough of his name until people forget he was part of the build. Around noon, I walked out. Didn't tell anyone where I was going. Just picked up my coat and let the door close behind me. Ellery Grounds was a 10-minute drive from the office, tucked between an old laundromat and a shuttered bookstore. It had the kind of mismatched chairs and dusty light fixtures that made it feel honest. No company slogans on the walls. Just chip mugs and quiet music. Dale was already there, sitting in his usual booth near the back. He'd been retired for 3 years, but somehow he still looked like someone in charge. Not because of his clothes, faded flannel, scuffed watch, but because he listened like it mattered. He looked up when I sat down and asked, flat out, "Did they try to make it feel like your fault?" I didn't answer right away, just nodded, slow. He smiled, but there was no joy in it. More like recognition. They did the same thing to me. You remember Sheila? Same tactic, different packaging. I stared at the tabletop, letting the grain lines blur. Dale leaned back. You know what they count on? That we'll take the blame, because we've always taken responsibility. But those two things aren't the same. I looked at him. I thought maybe I was just outdated. That's the line they sell you so you won't ask questions, he said. You're not outdated. You're inconvenient. You remember things. You hold standards. It hit hard because it was true. I didn't argue because I'd spent the last 24 hours doing just that, in my own head. We sat for a while, watching people come and go. Dale finally said, I still hear things. Old habits die slow. What kind of things? I asked. Well, a friend of mine from the board reached out last week, he said. They're reviewing departmental efficiencies. Kellan's been pushing a proposal, wants to modernize oversight. But funny thing is, no one ever mentioned that system failure to them. I felt the stir in my chest again. Not anger. Something sharper. He didn't go through formal channels. I asked. Seems not, Dale said. Which means either he's fast-tracking internal issues, or he doesn't want upper management looking too closely. The idea made my fingers curl around the mug. They'll start with you, Dale said gently. But you're not the target. You're the trial run. See how much they can get away with. It all started lining up in my head, how the meetings had shifted, how the tone had cooled, how I'd slowly been written out of conversations I used to lead. And now this. I've never filed a formal complaint in my life, I said. Maybe it's time to start a new habit, Dale replied. I finished my coffee and sat with the silence between us. There's a moment when you finally stop blaming yourself, where everything tilts just a little. Like the floor evens out again. You start to see the room clearly, Not the one they want you to see, but the one that's always been there. The garage smelled like motor oil, old cedar, and a bit of rust. I'd opened both side windows to let the fall air through. Leaves scraped gently against the concrete outside, like nature tapping a rhythm I hadn't noticed in a long time. I had the radio cracked open on the workbench. It was an old Zenith, the kind my father used to keep in his truck. Probably hadn't worked in 20 years. Didn't matter. Fixing it wasn't about sound, it was about stillness. About putting my hands on something real. No meetings. No politics. Just wires, solder, and a purpose. It was the first Saturday in a long time where I didn't feel rushed or watched. But even with the quiet, the same questions kept circling. If I stayed, what would I become? Just a fixture they walked past, a placeholder until it was convenient to remove me? If I left, what was I walking into? I was 57. Not the hotshot hire anymore. No fancy degrees. Just a man who knew systems better than most, and who cared more than he probably should have. That kind of loyalty used to be a strength. Now it felt like a liability. I didn't realize how long I'd been standing there until my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, it's Aria. Hope this isn't weird," she said quickly. "I got your number from the old team list." I stepped outside the garage and leaned against the doorframe. "Not weird. What's going on?" She hesitated. "I was wondering, do you have time for lunch? I think we need to talk." We met at a quiet Mexican place near the edge of town, one of those spots with vinyl booths and chips that never stop coming. She looked tired, like someone who'd been trying to swim against a current for too long. "They're restructuring more than they're admitting," she said, skipping small talk entirely. "It's not just you. 3 other names are on some version of a list. None of them know yet." I stared at the salsa bowl between us. "They're trying to avoid a paper trail," she added. "Move people out before end-of-quarter reviews. Avoid severance, avoid attention." I nodded slowly. "Makes sense. Push them out quietly. Let them resign before they ask questions." "Exactly." Then she looked at me differently. "There's something else. I'm working on that sensor optimization project, Directive 7. We're stuck." I looked over some of your old documentation. It was solid. Like, way better than what we've got. I tilted my head. "So you're calling in the old guy?" She smiled. "I'm asking the only person I trust to tell me what I'm missing." That hit me harder than I expected. It had been a while since anyone said they trusted me, not because of politics, but because they'd actually seen my work. I reached for a napkin and started sketching out an idea. We talked through the issue, and within 10 minutes, we'd identified 2 bottlenecks the current team had overlooked. When we finished, she slid the napkin into her folder like it was gold. "Thanks," she said. "Really." On the drive home, something settled in me. I wasn't useless. I wasn't obsolete. But I was in the wrong place to matter. And if I let them write my ending, they'd make it look like I'd faded out, not been forced out. That didn't sit right with me. Back at home, I opened my laptop and pulled up everything I'd kept, email chains, project logs, documentation of who assigned what and when. I organized it by date, included notations where responsibilities had shifted away from me, and flagged all the areas where my access had been removed. I didn't write a manifesto. I wrote the truth. Plain, precise, and verifiable. Then I logged into the company's internal legal portal. Quiet link, buried deep, marked for confidential reporting of policy violations. I uploaded the file and included a brief message. This submission concerns deliberate misrepresentation of technical responsibilities and targeted personnel elimination outside standard HR protocol. Documentation attached. I sat back and read it over 3 times before hitting submit. No anger in the words. No bitterness. Just clarity. They could try to replace me, phase me out, even erase me. But they weren't going to do it without a record. Without me speaking for myself, once and for all. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling for a long while. If they were going to write my ending, I'd make sure it had footnotes they couldn't delete. 2 days after I submitted the report, I got the email. Subject line, urgent HR review meeting. No explanation. No attachments. Just a time, a room, and a tone I'd learned to read a mile away, the kind that doesn't ask for your side of the story, just signals that one's already been written without you. I've been around long enough to know how these things go. You're called in just late enough in the day that the floor's half empty. You're placed in a cold room that smells faintly of laminate and lavender sanitizer. You're greeted not with "Hey, how are you?" but with "Please have a seat." Every detail is designed to disarm you, tilt the power dynamic before the first word leaves your mouth. But they were misreading me. I wasn't scared of rooms like that anymore. I walked in just before 4 p.m. The fifth-floor conference room had the blinds half drawn, casting faint stripes of early November sunlight across the wall like prison bars. Kellan was already there, seated with the posture of someone used to orchestrating outcomes. Beside him was a tall man in a navy blazer, Darren L. Marcus, legal. I'd seen the name on internal bulletins. The woman next to him, early 40s, no badge showing, had a stiff notebook and the faint, fixed smile of someone from corporate affairs. No greetings. No handshakes. Just clipped nods and an invitation to sit. I took the chair across from them. Didn't touch the water. Didn't unbutton my jacket. Kellan opened first. "We've received some concerning materials that you submitted anonymously." His voice was steady, but that last word, anonymously, was laced with accusation, like being discreet made it less valid. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Darren leaned forward and laced his fingers together on the table. "Our understanding is that certain documents were submitted through the internal legal channel. These include project assignments, timestamp communications, and operational notes related to recent events. We're reviewing them as part of a compliance inquiry." There it was, compliance. That was the label they were going to try to squeeze this into, like it was a paperwork issue, instead of a betrayal. Kellan shifted in his chair, pulling at the cuff of his shirt. "If employees choose to go outside the chain of command," he said, staring directly at me now, "that tells me something about trust." I leaned back, slow and deliberate. Not defensive. Just steady. "If the chain of command were built for truth," I said, "I might have trusted it." The woman from corporate affairs, Margot, I think, cut in quickly, like a traffic cop stepping between two speeding cars. "Our aim here isn't to escalate anything, Mr. Madsen. We're hoping for a cooperative review, an opportunity to clarify roles, address misunderstandings." Kellan didn't even look at her. His jaw was clenched, his eyes locked on mine. Because he knew. He knew the moment that report landed. The game had changed. They didn't expect it to get this far. They thought I'd file it and walk away, maybe grumble to a few old colleagues, maybe retire quietly. They didn't expect someone like me, gray at the temples, steady in the shadows, to document it all. Dates. Reassignments. The paper trail he'd hoped would stay buried. What they really wanted now was to spin this back around. Make me doubt my memory. Make me question my motives. Apologize, maybe. Shrink. But I didn't come to shrink. I looked straight at Kellan. "I spent 20 years doing the job no one clapped for," I said. "And I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because when something breaks, you fix it before it breaks somebody else." He didn't answer, so I pressed. "What you call disloyalty, I call honesty. What you call outside the chain, I call refusing to be silenced." He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. Someone in this room decided that the quiet version of me was the most convenient. That version's gone. I'm not here to make this easy for you. It landed. Hard. The room fell completely still. The kind of still where even the HVAC system seems to hold its breath. In the back of my mind, a line from last Sunday's sermon echoed. "Silence in the face of wrongdoing is not peace. It's surrender." And I had no intention of surrendering. For the first time in months, my spine straightened without effort. I felt present, grounded, alive. I leaned forward, voice calm. "I didn't go outside the chain," I said. "I went where the truth would be heard." Then I stood. No one told me to stay. No one stopped me. I walked to the door. Didn't look back. Not at Kellan. Not at legal. Not at the agenda they hadn't even opened. They could keep their forms. Their policies, their theater. I had something else now. I had clarity. And they had a problem that wouldn't die in silence. When I got home after that meeting, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't reach for a drink, or check the news, or call a friend to vent. I just stood there in the entryway of the house, keys still in my hand, letting the quiet wrap around me. The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual. A dog barked a few houses down. The house was still. Familiar. Mine. I walked to the table, the same one where my wife and I used to sit with stacks of Sunday mail and grocery lists. I sat down, palms flat against the wood, letting the hum of the refrigerator fill the silence that settled in around me like a thick wool blanket. I wasn't angry. Not the way I thought I'd be. I wasn't afraid of leaving. I was afraid of staying and becoming someone I didn't recognize. And the truth is, I'd seen that version of myself before. I'd seen it in the mirror on long, late evenings when I caught myself saying, "It's just the way things are now," instead of asking if it was right. I'd seen it in other men too, guys who used to speak up in meetings, who now looked down at their shoes and nodded through things they would have pushed back on 5 years ago. Guys who held on because walking away felt like failure. Even staying was a kind of slow erasure. I wasn't going to be one of them. I went out to the garage. It still smelled like sawdust and machine oil, warm, real grounding. I flipped on the lamp over my bench and opened my laptop. It booted slow, screen a little dusty, a few flecks of solder still clinging to the edge of the keyboard. Somehow, that felt like the right place to end something. Not in a boardroom, not under fluorescent lights, but here, quietly, on my own terms. I didn't agonize over the words. I'd already written them in my head a dozen times on the drive home. The letter wasn't long. It wasn't bitter. No finger-pointing. No speeches. Just the truth. I thanked the company for 20 years. I mentioned the colleagues who had taught me, challenged me, trusted me. I acknowledged the pride I once had in being part of something that, for a while, had felt worth building. Then I wrote, clearly and without apology, that I couldn't stay in a place where decisions were driven more by politics than by principle. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want recognition. I just wanted to leave with my name intact. I signed it, printed it, folded it into thirds, neat and clean, and slid it into an envelope. I didn't sleep much that night. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel restless. I felt still, settled. The next morning, I arrived early. Before the noise, before the rhythm of the day made it easier for people to pretend they didn't see you leaving. The HR office was quiet, just a soft buzz of overhead lights and the clack of a keyboard somewhere behind the partition. The woman behind the desk looked up, blinked like she hadn't expected anyone yet. "I'm here to submit my resignation," I said, handing over the envelope. She looked at it, then at me. Her eyes lingered a beat too long before she nodded once, quietly, almost like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Later that day, I got a message from Kellan. Just a subject line. "Come by when you have a moment." I knew it wasn't a courtesy. It was a formality. When I walked into his office, he was standing by the window. Didn't sit. Didn't offer me a chair. Didn't act surprised. "If that's your choice," he said, flat. I met his eyes. "It is." The pause that followed stretched long enough for someone to say something meaningful. But neither of us did. I didn't need closure from him, and he didn't have the capacity to give it. So I turned and left. No anger, just air. But something happened that I hadn't expected. As I made my way back to my desk for the last time, people I hadn't spoken to in months, people from departments that rarely crossed mine, started showing up. One at a time. Quiet, steady. A tech from facilities. A woman from accounting I barely knew by name. A young intern with a buzz cut who handed me a folded Post-it and walked away. "Thank you for how you handled that system scare in March. You always stayed calm when the room didn't. I wish we'd had more time to learn from you." None of them said goodbye with fanfare. Just nods. Just presence. And in that, there was more honor than any farewell party could have offered. I packed slowly. One cardboard box. Old notebooks. My soldering pen. A photo of my wife tucked into the back of a drawer, taken 15 years ago. Her smiling over a cup of coffee on our back porch. I looked at her face and felt a steadiness come over me. I passed the glass wall by the elevators and caught my reflection. Same gray at the temples, same tired eyes. But something in my posture had shifted. I stood straighter. I didn't feel small. I felt seen, by myself, if no one else. And that was enough. 2 months passed. The trees in the backyard had gone golden, dropping their leaves one steady gust at a time. Every morning, I still got up early, still made my coffee in the same worn-out mug, the handle still chipped like a reliable scar. But I didn't clip on an ID badge anymore, didn't check emails, didn't prep for meetings that never meant what they said. Now I walked out to the side garage, unlocked the old cedar door, and flipped on the overhead light. It buzzed to life, same as always. On the bench was a disassembled circuit board from a moisture sensor, the kind used in irrigation systems. Some startup team from Dayton had dropped it off last week. They'd heard I was a guy who still knows how to fix things with more than just software. And they weren't wrong. Turns out, there's still value in things built to last. Some mornings I worked with the garage door open, letting the sound of wind and lawnmowers mix with a low hum of solder. I wasn't building empires anymore, just restoring small pieces of what mattered. That was enough. Then came the email from Aria. Subject line, he's out. Her message was short, but it said plenty. Kellan's out. Officially. They're calling it a leadership reassessment. Guess your report meant something after all. I didn't lean back and grin. Didn't raise a fist in victory. I just sat there for a minute, eyes on the workbench, breathing a little deeper than before. It wasn't revenge. It was correction. Not because I'd fought dirty, but because I hadn't. I'd told the truth. I stood by it. And somehow, that had been enough to shift the tide, slowly, quietly, but completely. I wasn't angry anymore. Just relieved. Like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know was suffocating me. A few days later, I met Dale at Ellery Grounds. He was already there when I walked in, holding his mug like it was something sacred. We sat across from each other, no need for preamble. I heard about Kellan, he said, one brow raised. I nodded. Aria told me. He took a sip, then looked at me with that same half-smile he always used when he knew something before I said it. Didn't take long for someone to remember your worth, huh? I chuckled. Turns out I didn't need a title. I just needed to stop apologizing for having standards. He laughed at that. Amen to that. We sat in companionable silence after that, the kind you only earn after walking through fire and coming out the other side intact. Later that evening, I found myself walking the backyard, boots crunching against fallen leaves. I watched the last light of the day lean against the fence and thought about the version of me that once believed staying silent was noble. 20 years at Nordell hadn't been erased. They'd shaped me, hardened some parts, softened others. But more than anything, they taught me that dignity doesn't come from tenure. It comes from knowing when to speak. Standing up didn't make me lose something. It helped me keep what I'd almost forgotten was mine. I never became some headline. I wasn't promoted to some higher floor. But I became someone I could stand to look at again. Someone whose silence had turned, finally, into a full sentence. Respect is not something you earn by staying quiet. It's what you protect when you finally speak. A week later, I hung a small wooden sign outside the garage. Nothing fancy. Just routed letters, clean and honest. Madsen Technical Repairs, for systems worth saving. I didn't need billboards. Or applause. Just the hum of solder, the shape of purpose, and a little room to breathe. They thought I was finished. I was just finally free. Maybe you've been there, too. Sitting across from someone who once valued you, now pretending they don't remember what you gave. Maybe you've had to choose between keeping the peace or keeping your name. If you have, I get it. This story isn't about grand victories. It's about something quieter, choosing truth over comfort, even when it costs you. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave a place that no longer sees you, with your head held high. Have you ever walked away from something, not because you stopped caring, but because you started caring about yourself more? If this story meant something to you, I hope you'll stick around for the next one. There's more to tell.